drugs. They are unavoidable. Drugs are everything. From bad things like smoking and alcohol, there are also good things like medicine. You cannot turn without seeing a drug. Guess what? Those pieces of grass, well, they're made to be bigger. How? Drugs. The way that you're still alive? Drugs. Maybe you're watching in winter and you just got your flu vaccine? Drugs. Drugs are unavoidable. Those are good ways of drugs, but then they're bad ways. Maybe you just lit a cigarette, or maybe just threw it all in the trash after trying to quit. So, really, those Just Say No programs and other things like Boy Scouts, are they really doing anything? Short answer, no, because drugs are everywhere, as I just mentioned. Whenever you look around, you will see drugs. Look up, those clouds are big and puffy because they're infected by drugs. Those lights, technically they're drugs. They're powered by drugs. It's called nicotine. If you see somebody smoking, well, you can already tell that that's a drug. You see grass? Drugs. Fruits? Drugs. Yeah, whenever you eat an apple, you're eating a drug. Whenever you take a vaccine, drug. So you can't really avoid drugs. So what is this whole entire movement about? Simple, the negative drugs, like those tiny pieces of rolled paper with some sort of element inside it that makes you feel good and die of lung cancer. And then there's also this really lovely stuff that you put in glass bottles and makes you really, really high. And if you have a little bit too much and you get a little bit too high, you're going to get a bit drunk. So that's basically what the entire Just Say No thing is all about. But Just Say No is also talking about vaccines, bad vaccines. But they're only saying vaccines, so people are starting to say that vaccines are not good. Okay, let's make it short over here. Just imagine with your eyes and your mind. Okay, how about let's get a big box to show the entire population of children who, during the time of vaccines, before the vaccines. Okay, how many of them would die? 40% would be infected by measles, a terrible virus that we all know about. And about 10% of them will be fatal. But then let's look at actual studies after the measles vaccines was discovered. Okay, get the box back again. Now, in this box, about 20% of these kids will not be vaccinated. The other percent will be vaccinated. Out of that 20%, let's just move that other percent away. Boom. Move it like that. Now, let's cut it up a bit more. Now, out of all the unvaccinated kids, because of the vaccination shield, if there are more vaccinated people, then it creates a boundary for the virus to get to the unvaccinated people who would be at the center. So about half of all the unvaccinated kids would get measles. About 1% of those kids will die. About 5% will get some sort of allergic reaction. And finally, about, let's say, 10% will get maybe a little sweat, maybe a little fever, but nothing else. How has it changed? A lot. We went from 40% of all kids to 1% of all kids dying of measles. Right when the vaccine started, it did all of this. But let's look at another drug. The cigarette, and let's see the death counts of it. In early days, cigarettes were highly promoted unless you lived during the Civil War. You usually smoked cigars, which are not as good, not as bad. So, let's take a pretend check again with a big flat piece of paper. Okay, let's cut it during the 18th century. About 40% of the population would die of some sort of lung cancer or like a heart attack caused by all of that. About 20% would get some sort of really bad lung problem, and the rest would be fine. Because guess what? They aren't smoking. And then let's go look at modern day. Let's get the box again. Oh, okay, I destroyed it. Don't worry, got a new one. Let's cut it up. 20% die. Maybe in like one town, 20% die, especially like smaller towns where the laws are not as strict and the politicians are not that focused in it. And modern day, how about let's look at modern day. In modern day, for the entire population, about 5% die. That's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. And if you look at how other drugs, like the measles, and the amount of deaths caused by it, by the vaccine and stuff, we will see that it has really steadily decreased. But for drugs like cigarettes, it is lowered by onto 5%, which is much better than the vaccine stuff. But it stayed at 5% for about 1 century. So we aren't doing it that much to get rid of it. We can't just look at the current percentage. We also have to look at how long this percentage was. So drugs, they can help you, but they can also injure you. So some drugs will help you like vaccines. They can lower the decrease, but then if you compare it to bad ones, the vaccines would kill more than the bad ones. But the bad ones killed 5% for a longer amount of time. Drugs is unavoidable. But be sure to understand what type of drug you're looking at. Apples, clouds, grass, good drugs. Alcohol? You already know what I'm trying to say.